It has been 266 days since my last 300 Winchester Magnum video. It was all the way back in February. It's currently November. Everything just kind of went sideways and the project got set to the side. So here's a brief history. We've got a Thompson Center compass and 300 Winchester Magnum. For the first two videos I made about it, it was shooting pretty decent. The thing has an incredibly long throat. We have to load bullets way out at very long overall lengths, but we were shooting some halfway decent groups. It was all about bullet selection. Stuff that could get close to the lands and still fit in the magazine was shooting great. Stuff that was way back off the lands was shooting crappy. But we were finding some success, mainly with the Sierra Match King line of bullets. The 175, the 220 grain, the 240 grain, we were seeing acceptable results. Then I changed the stock. I went from the standard plastic stock and put the gun into a Boyd's Pro Varmint laminated wood stock, and the groups just went to crap. So what I needed to do was, glass bed that Boyd stock. I've never done a glass bedding job or installed pillars or any of that stuff. So I started researching that process, and it's just complicated. Or it's complicated for me because I overthink things. I tend to over-research, yeah. I get jammed up, like I get stuck. I don't feel comfortable going forward, and a project like this ends up on the shelf for 266 days. Well, I finally got it done. I've got the Boyd stock, I installed pillars, I got it glass bedded. I'm happy with the result. Like, I think I did a decent job. So now it's time to try that out and see if it helped things. So that's the whole point of today's video. I want to load up some of our successful loads from the past, and I want to shoot it in my newly bedded stock and see what happens. So here's some load data. One thing that kind of sucks is my earlier videos where we were having some success, I was mainly shooting Reloader 26. Reloader 26 has not been available for over a year. And as of today, I still can't find it anywhere. So my stockpile's empty, and yeah, we've got to switch powders. That sucks. I was really hoping to go back and shoot exact loads that I had shot previously, but it's just not going to happen with the ones we shot Reloader 26 with. The first load here with the 175 grain Sierra Match King and 69.0 grains of H4350. This is an exact duplicate of what we shot back in the first video. This shot good groups, so that's the first load. Moving on to the 175 grain Sierra Match King. This is one where I was primarily shooting Reloader 26. So we're switching it up, and I actually want to shoot two powders here. The first is IMR 7977. We're going to do 73.0 grains of that. And the second is Hodgdon H1000. 73 grains of this as well. I think between one of those, we should get something that shoots a halfway decent group. The last bullet is the 240 grain Sierra Match King. In the second video, we shot some of these to see if they were going to stabilize in this gun. They not only stabilized, but they shot some good groups. Unfortunately, that was with Reloader 26, so we're switching things up here a little bit. First, Hodgdon H1000, we're going to shoot 70.0 grains. And I'm also going to shoot Alliant Reloader 23, 66 grains of that. Now these Sierra Match Kings, they're all kind of the standard traditional Sierra Match King ogive shape. So they basically end up at the same overall length, the same cartridge-based ogive measurement, except that the 175s are a little bit short. We need to seat them a little bit deeper just to, make sure we get plenty of bearing surface to neck contact. So the 175s are at 3.425 inches of overall length, and the 220 and the 240 are at 3.475. For primers, I forgot to pull them out. Here they are. We're going to stick with the CCI 250 large rifle Magnum primers. We were planning to switch over to Federal gold medal match primers earlier in the series, but I don't want to do that yet. This is what we had success with in the first couple videos, so that's what we're trying to duplicate here. And they're good primers. Now for brass, we've been shooting a batch of Hornady brass. I've got 25 pieces here. This is going to be the 5th firing on this brass. So far it's holding up pretty darn good. In the last video or the video before, I can't remember, we did a little bit of light neck turning just to kind of knock the high spots, try and make them a little bit more uniformly thick. So far so good with this little batch of Hornady brass. So 25 pieces. We're going to load 5 rounds of each of the loads we talked about a minute ago. And I'm also going to load up a few sighters because we need to sight in the scope and crap before we get to shooting groups. And for those, I've got a couple boxes of the 220s that just have a few left in them. And some of them are like a little bit weird on length. I don't remember if it was in this series or it might have been in a 300 Blackout series. But on my 220 grain Sierra Match King bullet stockpile, I got some lot numbers mixed up and stuff, and some of them were varying a lot in length from bullet base to ogive, and I was getting funky overall length variation and all of that stuff. So these boxes are basically, I think they're mainly the ones I pulled out because their lengths were weird. So our sighters might not exactly shoot good, but I don't want to waste these bullets, so we're going to load them up, use them to sight in our scope. It ought to do the job just fine. I'll load those up with the H1000 load because I've got a couple pounds of H1000, but 79, 77, I've only got this 1 pound to play with. And that's the plan. Assuming this goes well, I'll talk more about the bedding at the end of the video. I didn't film it all. It was a mess. It was, dirty work, epoxy flying all over the place, and sawdust and Dremel tools and all that crap. I needed to focus on the task instead of focusing on making a video about it. And the process is well documented on YouTube. There's lots of videos about bedding. But assuming things go well and my stock doesn't crack in half when we shoot it, at the end of the video, I'll go through a few specific things about the Thompson Center compass to help you out if you're looking to bed your compass. So that's it. Our 25 pieces of brass, I did go ahead and wet tumble them a little bit so they're cleaned up. I'm not going to anneal them today. I annealed before the last firing, so we're just going to size them up and load them up. I think I trimmed after the last firing as well, so hopefully there's not any major trimming work or anything needed. But that's where we're starting. So let's get to the press and do a little bit of resizing. All right, so we're going to use the Hornady match grade bushing type full-length sizing die. I did pick up 3 bushings for this. I've got a 331, a 332, and a 333. The 332 is what's in there right now. I think we picked up the 331 because after we were doing some neck turning, thought we might need to go a little bit smaller. I'm going to stick with the 332 in case, unless I find some reason to switch. I think this is what we used in the last video, so yeah. So 332 bushing. I did pick up this Lyman 8-station turret press. It's like All-American 8, I think they call it. Got a smoking deal on these a while back that I couldn't pass up. I think it's 140 bucks, something like that. So I'm still in the process of evaluating it. It's basically a clone of the Redding T7 that I've used for years. And so far it's a really nice press. Haven't found any reason to complain. So we're going to use some Redding Imperial sizing die wax here on our cases. And the plan is to just, bump the shoulder 1 or 2 thousandths. So with the Hornady headspace comparator, these are currently coming out at 2.280. Check another one here. Yep, 2.280. So we'll shoot for about 2.278 or 2.279. Yep, there's a third one. They're all right at 2.280. So here goes the first one. Went up in there pretty tight, but popped right out. And now it's reading 2.281. So it actually grew, right? Like cartridge base to the shoulder actually grew. And you'll see that sometimes when you've got your sizing die set to where it resizes the body but doesn't quite make it down to the shoulder. As this thing gets squeezed and sized, it actually lengthens just a touch. So we need to keep going down until we get to that shoulder. All right, let's try it again. No change, still haven't touched the shoulder. One good thing about a bushing die is when you're setting up your die, you can use the same piece of brass without screwing it up too much. With a standard die with an expander ball, where the neck of the die reduces the neck down and then drags an expander through it, if you use one piece of brass to set your die, it's continuously getting that neck worked over and over. But bushing die, no expander, nothing to worry about there as far as working your brass with multiple resizes. All right, still haven't touched it. See what it feels like on the shell holder. All right, there we go. That's a little bit better contact with the shell holder. Hopefully I didn't go too far. Nope, I think we're close though. We're basically back to 2.280 where we started. So let's just go down a tiny little bit and see if that does it. Oh baby, perfect. 2.279. So 1,000th of bump Move on to the next one. Our starting value is the same, 2.280. Run it through the die and see what we get. This one's not really showing that bump. Still getting 2.280. Or this. If I wiggle it a little bit, there it is. So one more tweak on the die here a little bit. There we go. All right, we barely touched it here. 2.279, we're gonna call that good. And I'm gonna run that first piece back through one more time to get the new setting. Okay, so I got the first 5 pieces sent through the full-length sizing die. And if you remember back, we've got one more step in the resizing process. It's this Larry Willis belt sizing die thing. Remember this? It's got a collet that you slide down over the case all the way to the belt. And then it squeezes and sizes that portion right above the belt. A standard full-length sizing die isn't able to get that spot. So that's what the Larry Willis die is all about. And we actually screw it into the press from the bottom. And if you guys remember, the top part of this die, let me try and focus in on it a little bit better. Maybe that's better. The top part acts as a case gauge, where you drop your case in there, and this piece actually already goes in there pretty good. It hits a little bit of resistance when the belt gets to the top. There's the next one. Yep, that one will not go down to the belt. So that's what this die is all about. That one doesn't quite go in. So that's what this is all about. So here's the first one, got the collet on there, just like that. Then we run it up. I tell you what, it's been a while since I've used it. You're supposed to lube this stuff. I've already got lube on the case underneath the collet, but I want to put a little bit on the collet so it doesn't get stuck up in the die. Better safe than sorry. So now we just run it up in there all the way and then drop it out. And then slide the collet off. Takes a little bit of force, but it's usually not too bad. And then double check it. In the case gauge portion, goes in there no problem. So let me find the one that was particularly bad here. Yeah, that one absolutely will not go down into the case gauge part. There we go, collet on there, up into the die and down, slide it off, and now goes down in there no problem. Now, if you want an actual measurement, this is another piece that won't go all the way down on there. And it's reading 512 thousandths right there below the belt or above the belt, whichever one you want to call it. So we send it up in and they always come out at 510. So that's it. That's our resizing process. This die's pretty cool. It was sent to me by a viewer named Eric. I think it was. Yep, it was Eric. And this is supposed to really extend that life of this brass, because it apparently bulges right above that belt are what gets you with belted Magnum cartridges. And what I've been doing, the brass I've been using for ciders, I haven't been using this, and the ones we're shooting for groups, kind of our main batch of brass, I have been using it. So hopefully over time we'll be able to tell whether it's making a positive impact on our brass life. All right, that's it here for resizing. I'm going to run through the rest of the brass, and then we'll be ready to check length, see if any other brass prep's needed. Okay, so resizing is complete. Now I just need to make sure these guys aren't too long. And not getting off to a good start here. Let me double check the manual. Max case length 2.620. And this first one here is 2.622, just a little bit over 2.617. So that one's a little bit under. 2.622, that one's a little bit over. Yeah, it looks like I'm gonna need to trim. I haven't really checked my chamber yet to see how long I can let brass grow. Sometimes a lot of them give you more room than the maximum, spec. But we're just gonna stick to the book for the time being. Yep, I better pull out the Frankfurt Arsenal Case Prep Center. All right, here we go. I tell you what, for anybody wanting an update on this piece of gear, I've been using it for quite a while now. I still love it. It's very versatile, so it comes with all of these different pieces for the trimming part that covers pretty much anything you'd want to trim. Some short cases, it's a pain in the butt. Like 300 Blackout, it's a pain in the butt just because it's so short and it's hard to get a hold of the end of the case. But for most stuff, it's pretty good. It's got a little storage compartment on top that keeps all of the parts There are two main parts. There's this plastic piece that needs to be able to slide up the side of the case, and there's the little metal piece that the neck needs to go down through. It sits about halfway up the shoulder. So on the trimming head, the silver piece goes in first, followed by the plastic piece, followed by this, which is still a bit of a pain in the butt to get on. It's got a big O-ring that always wants to slip on me, but the more you use it, the more you get used to it. The other thing that's a little bit confusing is this is left-hand threads, so you gotta, or at least I always have to think about, all right, which way am I turning now? And, you know, that sort of deal. So I've got it backed way out. Put a case in here, and then tighten this up just a little bit until it grips the case pretty well with that plastic piece. And we screw this in until the brass approaches the cutting head. So let's fire it up and see if that touches it. Nope, not quite. And this has markings on it that are pretty close to 1,000, so I moved 5 there. Sometimes you can just kind of push it in and feel whether you're hitting anything, and we're not. There. Nope, still not touching. All right, finally got to where I can put the case in and twist it, and I can feel it hitting the blade, so hopefully this isn't too far. See what it gives us. I usually spin it about a full rotation, and there we are. And that's 2.611. So our trim length is 2.610. I'm going to call that good enough. Let's try the next one. Next one here came out to 2.613. I do always seem to get a lot of variation with this. Well, not a lot, but maybe 2 or 3 thousandths of variation. And I haven't really figured out exactly why. Because of course it indexes off of the shoulder. So you need to have your cases all resized or all, you know, the same. Because it's basically measuring from shoulder to case mouth. So, you know, but these have all been resized. So I'm not really sure where it comes from. This does, like right now, I do have a 22 caliber Pilot in there. If I swapped that out for, you know, a 30 caliber Pilot in this case, and it held the cases a little bit straighter into the blade, maybe that would clean that up. But to be honest with you, it's just not something I've really worried about too much because it's not that critical. At least I don't think. And of course, the other nice thing with this, once you finish trimming, you can go ahead and deburr and chamfer that case mouth. All in one operation. All right, I'm gonna finish this and we'll be ready for primers. All right, primers. There we go. So lately I've been using this Lee hand priming tool. This is kind of the latest design that I hadn't tried before. And I love this thing so far. Like everything fits in this nice little case. And for somebody like me who's a little challenged when it comes to staying organized, I love this little thing. Got a tray. Got the tool itself. We're going to need the large primer head thingy. And I think this comes with the shell holder for 300 Win Mag. I need to Google what shell holder number that is. All right, so that is the number 5, and it did come with the kit, so we're good there. And swapping this head part is nice and easy. Go ahead and drop the shell holder in. And we're ready to rock. This primer tray, I kind of love it and hate it at the same time. It's nice because it's compact, and I think it's the only hand priming tool I've ever used that feeds reliably. All the others you end up having to shake it to get the primers to feed right. This one just flows them right in there, and you never get any jam ups. But it's a little bit hard to flip into, right? Kind of like this. You can't really get your pack of primers completely flat on it, but yeah, let's see if we can go fast enough to not spill anything. Yeah, it looks like it. A little bit of a shake gets them all turned. Then we close it and leave it on the lock position. Slide this dude right into the top and switch it to on. We're ready to go. I do kind of use both thumbs just to make sure it gets in there and bottoms out really nicely. But I just love the way it feels. They make a bench mounted version of the same sort of setup that if I had a little bit more, space to permanently mount stuff to the bench, I would probably go with one of those bench mounted jobs. So all the primer pockets in this Hornady brass still feel good. I mean, we haven't really had the opportunity to load them up very hot because we've been, just doing preliminary testing and trying to troubleshoot the gun. Just haven't really had the opportunity to work up max loads, max velocity loads at this point. But so far so good. And one other last note about that Lee hand priming tool, I still haven't managed to flip any primers backwards or put any of them in sideways. So it feeds well, keeps the primers straight. Just really happy with that priming tool so far. So I moved on to weighing out my charges. And as you can see, starting with H1000, all the other powders are off the bench for safety. And the first ones I'm weighing out here, these are I had 9 pieces of brass for ciders and then our 25 for testing. So not much drama here, just weighing out charges. All right, so it's time to get started with bullet seating. I'm using a Hornady custom grade bullet seating die with their micrometer adjust stem. Got a case in there, screwed it down until I felt it touch the case mouth. I'm going to back it out a little over a turn. We've got a seating stem that fits this Sierra ogive very nicely. So what we're trying to dial in here, these are the ciders, my 9 ciders with the 220 grain Sierra Match King. So we're looking for a 2.9 inch cartridge based ogive measurement. Okay, we're about 140 thousandths too long. So there's 50, 100, 140. All right, right on the number, 2.9 inches. All right, so now we move on to the ones that count. First is the 175 grain Sierra Match King. One thing I noticed whenever I was just sitting the bullets into the cases after I weighed the charges, we don't have very much neck tension. Like I can feel the bullet, wanting to go on through. It almost feels like you could seat it with your hands. So we should have gone to that smaller bushing back when we were resizing. Yeah, this first one here doesn't seem too bad. Yeah, it feels like we got a little bit. I'll measure it here in just a second. So with the 75, I'm running 2.850 cartridge based ogive, and then if we measure to the tip, it should be right around 3.425 and 3.423. Very close. But yeah, this one feels okay as far as neck tension goes. Let me take a quick measurement. So with a bullet seated, I'm getting about 333, and without a bullet, it's hard to hold it this way without the bullet seated, but yeah, I'm getting about 332, sometimes 3325, so I'm looking at about 1/1000th of neck tension, which is a little less than I would prefer. Yeah, so this one here felt particularly light when I was seating the bullet. Came out 2.848, and I've been kind of, just pushing on it, seeing if the bullet would move, and I can't get it to move like by hand. So the case at least has a hold of the bullet enough to where we should be able to load the gun and all that without, worrying about the bullet moving on us. And we don't have any highly compressed loads today, so I think we're going to be fine. So that's pretty much it, folks. All of these are going to be exactly the same, so I'll just catch you guys out on the range. All right, are you guys nervous? I'm kind of nervous. Not like afraid of blowing my face off sort of nervous, more like a please God, let this work sort of nervous. First thing we got to accomplish is to sight the gun in. Speaking of guns, it is a Thompson center compass. You all know that already, right? A Boyd's Pro Varmint stock. I threw my Silencer Co. Omega suppressor on there. I've got the gun basically bore sighted, just basically, looking down the bore and adjusting my scope to match what I see. So I don't know, let's first of all see if we're on paper and see if the stock breaks in half. All right, so the stock didn't break in half. That's a good start. Unfortunately, I don't see my shot on the paper down there. I don't appear to have shot my camera. Oh, there's the hole. It went into the bottom left orange dot. I was aiming at the center, by the way. So that is a little under 6 MOA left. So let's move right 5.5 and up about 5.5. All right, let's see where that puts us. All right, just about perfect. Oh, I missed that wallop. Nothing like some nice heavy recoil. All right, let's move right 1/2 minute. And I tell you what, we'll go 3/4 of a minute. And let's move down 1/4 minute. And that should put us just about perfect. I need more ammo. All right, we'll load up 2 more. All right, not too bad, close enough. All right, let me go hang a proper target and we'll get to shooting some groups. All right, folks, now it's for real. I'm a little bit worried about this neck tension. If things go sideways here and we can't shoot a group to save our lives, I may go back to the bench, dump all these charges, resize all the brass again, and see if that helps. Hopefully that won't be a thing. All right, so we're starting out with the 175 grain Sierra Match King with 69 grains of H4350. Chronograph is armed and ready to go. Let's see what happens. You know what? I think I almost got a case head separation on that piece of brass. It's got a little bit of a ridge around it. Keep an eye on that. Yeah, no, that piece is fine, from what I can tell. Yeah, the first 3 shots looked good, but then kind of opened up on us there. I didn't see any more pieces of brass that had that ring around them that the first one did. Yep, we'll have to have a look at that. You know, I really should have brought out my torque wrench so I could double check the action bolts. You know what? I think I'll run in and grab it just to be sure. Don't want anything coming loose. And you know what? I probably ought to check the scope as well. Yep, it's worth the time. Okay, so the action screws were still nice and tight. I went ahead and loosened them up and retorqued them again just to be sure. Scope rings were still tight. Everything seems okay. So we're moving on. Next is the 220 grain Sierra Match King. First load is 73 grains of IMR 7977. So this is the first time I've shot this powder, so let's see what happens. First piece of brass looks good. So that last round I had in my magazine kind of fed a little bit, and now I'm looking at it. I'm just worried about this stupid neck tension. Tell you what, I'm gonna single feed everything from here on out, just to make me feel a little bit better. That way I can ease it up into the chamber and not worry about any bullets getting set back. All right, that's not a bad group. So our velocity statistics are garbage today, and I expect them to continue to be garbage. I think it has a lot to do with that neck tension. I'm not even going to concern myself with them until we get that neck tension straightened out. Because I think with them that loose, we're probably getting inconsistent, ignition or starting pressures, that sort of deal. So we'll worry about that later. All right, next up, same bullet, 220 Sierra Match King, this time with 73 grains of H1000. All right, got the barrel a little bit warm here. I'm gonna take a little break before we shoot the last 10 shots. I'm pretty happy with those 220 grain Sierra Match King groups. We got 10 more shots to go, so I'll keep my mouth shut for right now. All right, so I took a little break, grabbed a bite to eat. Feeling pretty good. The gun's cooled down. It's still warm, but it's cooled down quite a bit. Let's make these last 10 shots count. We're moving over to the 240 grain Sierra Match King. First up is 70 grains of H1000. Ah, that last one went up high, didn't it? That's okay. Still not too shabby. Okay, last up, Reloader 23, 66.0 grains of it with the 240 grain Match King. All right, finished off strong. Oh, what a relief. I think we're back in business, folks. I think we're back in business. Whew, feels so good. Let's get back to the bench and celebrate a little. Okay, so I'm extremely happy with today's results. Only that first group was over an inch. Like it was a little ugly at 1.5 inches. But those first 3 shots, you know, they looked like they were trying to group, and then those last 2 just kind of screwed it all up. The next 3 groups were just under an inch, and then that last one was a 460. That last one was almost a better group until that last shot. So a lot of hope here. Like the gun's trying to group, even with our crazy neck tension problem, that really had me worried, but it got the job done. Like if we look at the last couple targets from my last couple range trips before the bedding job, this gun, I mean, it would occasionally shoot a decent group, but a lot of them were 2 and 3 inch groups. It was ugly. It was really, really ugly. So vast improvement. I feel like we're on the right track. So I cleaned up that piece of brass that I thought nearly had a case head separation, and I think it is. And I looked through the rest of the box and I found one other piece that had a little bit, it wasn't nearly as bad as that first shot, but it had a little bit of a ring. So I grabbed like a dental pick sort of deal and was reaching down in there. A lot of times you can feel it. You can feel that groove, and I'm definitely think I'm feeling something there. Yeah. So what I'm going to do in the next video, I want to wet tumble this and then maybe try and chop it in half. Hopefully I can do that with a Dremel or something so we can have a look at what's going on in there. And I'll try and do that to several pieces so we can just kind of inspect it. We got 5 firings, and from what people were telling me about the Hornady brass, that actually might not be too bad. A lot of folks claim this stuff is junk, but we've got more of it. Like I bought quite a bit of it. So we'll be able to continue testing it, but for now, this first batch is done. They've all been fired the same number of times, and once I see a problem like that, the whole batch is done. So we'll have a closer look in the next video, maybe see what's actually going on inside. So I've got 3 projects here for the 300 Winchester Magnum that I am extremely excited about. Now that we've got a decent shooting gun, I want to put a few more rounds through it to be 100% certain, and then I want to jump into a couple things. First of all, are these 230 grain Hornady A-tips. I bought this box like it's been a while, intending to shoot them in the 300 Winchester Magnum and just haven't been able to. So we're going to get to the A-tips really soon. Another one is another Sierra Match King. This is the 200 grain, the number 2231. One of my supporters over on Patreon was asking me about these and asking if I would do a video. I got to be honest, I didn't know these existed until he asked me about them. I just haven't been paying very much attention this year to some of the new products. I think these came out right around the beginning of the year. Now, if you look here, it says 9-inch twist or faster. Well, my 300 Winchester Magnum is a 10-inch twist. So how does that make sense? A 200 grain bullet with a 9 twist recommendation. Well, have a look at this thing lined up next to the 240 grain Match King. They're pretty close in length. You have got to load these crazy long. Like, even though our Thompson Center Compass has a pretty generous magazine, we're going to be loading them even longer. Like, these are single feed only, super duper long VLD style bullets. The ballistic coefficient is ridiculous. So I'm looking forward to trying these out. And I'm not worried at all about that 9-inch twist recommendation because that's more for 308 velocities from what I'm reading. Like you get into lower velocity 308 stuff with a bullet this long and that's when you'll run into stability problems. So with the 300 Win mag and our velocity's up, we're not going to have any problem whatsoever. And you know, the 240s are another kind of example here. You know, right there on the box it says 9 twist barrels only. Well, our 10 twist we saw today, shot our best group with them. These have shot really good in the 300 Winchester Magnum. So the third project that I'm extremely excited about has to do with these. A viewer sent me 2 boxes. It's actually 34 pieces of Mark 248 Mod 1. This is a military round. It shoots the 220 grain Sierra Match King. As far as I know, we're gonna tear a couple apart. We're gonna give them the full inspection, and we're gonna do our best to clone their performance. A lot like we did in the Mark 262 video over in 223-556. I've got the same sort of series planned here. But from what I know, it's a 220 grain Sierra Match King with H1000 powder. The same combination we shot today. But the charge we shot today was 2,715 feet per second. I think these are going to be a whole lot hotter. And I think, you know, cloning their performance is going to be a pretty good challenge. The question is going to be, so I think these are probably standard overall length. Actually, they're not. I think the Sammy Max overall length is 3.340. Is that right? I think that's right. Let me double check. Yep, and these are out at 3.462 is this one that I'm reading right now. So that's only 13 thousandths shorter than what we were shooting today. That is awesome. That's really good. So we already know that the bullet is capable of shooting in this rifle at that overall length. So extremely excited about this project here because as far as I know, these are not commercially available. Like you can't buy these. So happy to have them. Can't wait to try them out. The other thing, back to the brass, where, you know, we are probably going to ditch this first batch of Hornady. I'm thinking we might move to Norma. If you'll recall, a viewer had sent me some Norma. He was having problems with it and wanted me to try it out. We took 10 pieces and we've shot them a couple times. I've still got plenty left here, 30 something left. So I think this next batch, maybe we'll go with Norma and shoot it for a little bit, see how it goes. I mean, in the earlier videos, we already determined it's much more consistent weights, and it's just better brass. So I want to give the Hornady A-tip and that 200 grain Sierra Match King, I want to give them the best opportunity to shoot well. So we'll do that in some Norma. But I think with the Mark 248 Mod 1, I've got to shoot federal brass, right? I think. We'll get to that later. So I think that's pretty much it. I did promise you a look at the stock. I'll tear it apart here and we'll look at it. I'll kind of point out a few mistakes I made and stuff like that. There are lots and lots of resources, lots of great videos, and I'll link them down in the description. A couple in particular are the Social Regressive goes through the process with a Boyd stock really well. I think he was betting a Savage. So a few minor differences with your compass, but it's a good foundation to work from and kind of see the process. So I watched through those videos several times. Gun Blue 490, has got some great videos, really long and in-depth, and you know, he takes his time and explains what's going on. There's one on Iraq Veteran 8888, the gunsmith on there, Ray, is that his name? Yeah, the gunsmith over there on that channel, he did a good video or two on the betting process. So I'll have plenty of links in the description. I just don't feel remotely qualified to try and demonstrate it at this point. Maybe after I've done 3 or 4 more. And I'm probably never going to do 3 or 4 more. Plus, this is a reloading channel. We need to get back to reloading. Let's let other people worry about stock betting. All right, let me get this guy torn apart. We'll have a look. All right, so here's a look at the final product. I used the DevCon 10110, and I bet it all the way back and all the way up. Sometimes you'll see people just bed around the recoil lug and the action screws, but I wanted to go ahead and get the entire thing. And as you can see, I did install pillars there, front and rear. And this is one place where I've still got some cleanup to do here on the bottom. But on the top, the action sits right down onto the aluminum pillar, front and rear, and with the entire length bedded the way it is, like it fits down in there like a glove. So for comparison, this is the stock from my 6.5 Creedmoor. It's the same Boyd's Pro Varmint, just to kind of give you an idea of the starting point. And one of the big problems I had with this, which hopefully I can show you here with the Creedmoor. Yeah, let's move the camera up a little bit. So it's sitting down in there, but you can absolutely rotate this guy left to right, and there's a good bit of slop forward and backward into that recoil lug. So these stocks, I mean, it's super sloppy to start with. And that made it difficult because, well, what I ended up doing, I installed the pillars first. I did two completely separate operations. I installed the pillars and then laid the bed afterward. I guess with some rifles, you know, most factory actions, even the factory plastic stock for the compass, it fits the action very nicely. Like, it goes down in there tightly. It doesn't slop around like you just saw the Creedmoor doing. So I think whenever you've got something that fits a little bit better, you can do the bed and the pillars at the same time. But I just didn't feel like I was going to be able to get things aligned if I tried to do it that way. So I started with the basic stock, drilled the holes, and installed the pillars. And once I felt like the action was sitting, you know, firmly on the pillars, then I was able to remove all of this material and fill it in. The biggest mistake, and to be honest, I just set the whole project aside for a couple months after this happened. Whenever I was drilling the hole for the front pillar, the freaking stock cracked. And if I can get the light just right, hopefully you can see this entire section of wood here was lost. So this is nothing but the DevCon epoxy here behind the front pillar. I really thought the stock was ruined. And I mean, to be honest, until this video when I shot it, like, I really didn't think it was going to hold. And I'm going to be keeping my eye on that in the future. But I think, you know, I've got it bedded to where the contact between the recoil lug and the barrel is really, really good. So hopefully I don't really have a lot of force going, you know, down into this area anyway. So hopefully it'll hold. The other thing that kind of freaks me out is you'll notice there's a little bit of bedding epoxy on top of the recoil lug. Yep, and it is the tiniest little skim coat. Just an itty tiny little bit. Now, in an ideal world, there wouldn't be any of that. I would be getting perfect contact between the top of the recoil lug and my barrel, but it just didn't work out that way. And with these Boyd stocks, these recoil lugs are pressed in and they are glued in. So I read 100 different forum posts about guys trying to remove the recoil lug from a Boyd stock, and it didn't sound easy. And I think it usually ended up with them needing to heat it up to melt the glue and crap. And then even once that was melted, it's pressed in pretty tight and it's a gigantic pain in the ass to get out of there. So I didn't move it. And whenever I did the pillar installs, there must have been some, you know, some wood material that was keeping that up off of there just the tiniest little bit. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny little bit. But once the pillars were in place at that height, then, I mean, that's where it is forever. If I wanted to fix that, what I would have to do is Dremel out all of the epoxy, all of the bedding compound, and then maybe file down the pillars a little bit while somehow monitoring this gap to get a little bit more, you know, full contact between those two surfaces. I didn't do that, and I'm not planning to do that. I don't think it's going to be a problem whatsoever. Especially because if you look at, let me grab the 300 Win Mag action. If we look at the part of the barrel that makes contact with that recoil lug, you see the shiny spots there and there. That recoil lug is not a perfect fit to this barrel. So to really get that tight, I would need to reshape the recoil lug to sit in here a little bit better. That's way outside my comfort zone. So I just didn't worry about it. Like I was mentioning, still needing to do some cleanup. What I want to do here on the front recoil lug, this is also where the mag catch is. I'm still using the standard Boyd's front magazine catch, which is just this piece of plastic. What I want to do is make one of these out of metal, which it may not be pretty, but I think I can do it myself. So if I could get one of these that was metal, I would really like to bed it in there, like permanently. Because to me, it just seems stupid to have a pillar where you're wanting, you know, metal on metal contact all the way through, and then you put a big plastic washer in there. You know, it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit, I think. Maybe a little bit. But this is extremely hard plastic. Like you can see a little bit of marks there from where the washer rides, but I went to 60 inch-pounds and it felt like it was okay. And it shot okay today. But I would really like to install a metal one to get better contact there. Same thing in the rear. This is where the trigger guard sits, and I don't quite have it perfectly flat in there, of course. So what I want to do is just drop a little bit of the bedding compound in there, make sure and grease this up so it releases pretty well, and just kind of make sure that I've got a really good connection there where the rear pillar meets the back of the trigger guard. So those are kind of my two biggest concerns. I want to fix them, but I don't really expect to see huge gains, on either of those. It's more about just cleaning it up and feeling like I got the best connection I possibly can. One place I really it was fine, but it's just extremely ugly, is right here around the tang. You can see, look at that groove. But you can see where the actual action sits, and it's in there nice. But the problem was I had so much epoxy in there and it was squeezing out. And while I was taking paper towels and crap and everything trying to get this wiped off my stock, I just didn't get that nice flat surface that I wanted around that area. But that's okay. It's kind of a little reminder, staring right at you every time you grab the gun that, yep, you suck at bedding. And I do mean that. Like, I really did a terrible job the first time through. If you follow me over on Instagram, I posted a few pictures as I was going along, and the first time I tried to lay the bed, I did not put nearly enough epoxy. I'll show you a picture of basically this front part the first time I tried it. Like, just huge voids. I used less than half the amount of epoxy I should have. So I had to Dremel it all out and start all over. And the next time, like, by God, I used a ton of epoxy, and I had it squeezing out all over the place, and trying to, clean it up and not make a mess was a huge challenge. But that second time through, it came out nice. I'm really, really happy with it. And like I mentioned, the action now sits down in here. There it goes. Really, really tight. Even, no action screws or anything. You can't get any movement side to side or, front to back. Like, it just fits like a glove, just like you'd want it. The other thing about this stock, which is, I never had a problem with my 6.5 Creedmoor stock, but this one, especially right up here at the front, the clearance to the barrel wasn't nearly enough. Like, when I first installed it, it was actually making contact with the barrel, and then I had sanded it out a little bit, and I think in an earlier video, we had slid a dollar bill under there and all that just to make sure. I went ahead and hogged this thing out quite a bit more, and I did a pretty crappy job. I just used, instead of buying a barrel channel reamer or whatever, I ended up using like sanding drums of various sizes and just going up and down this guy, taking out a bunch of material. So it's all uneven. Whenever the barrel's installed, you can kind of see it's all wavy and uneven. But it gets the job done. Like, I definitely have plenty of clearance now. So I think that's pretty much it. Like, hopefully that maybe tells you what to do and what not to do. Maybe gives you some idea of what your compass bed might look like. There's part of it, like, you see this big ugly kind of section right there. It's up into the magazine well, so like that didn't matter. I could have cleaned that up and made it a little bit prettier. Same thing on the other side in that same area. But overall, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with today's groups. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if that front pillar, that epoxy job behind the front pillar works. The way I did that was I got a heavy piece of plastic, like from a plastic clamshell type of container for something, and I cut it out to fit that, and I actually super glued it in place and then filled behind it with the epoxy, and it worked okay. It was clear, so I could see through there, make sure I didn't leave any voids as I was trying to get the epoxy down in there and filling the area. So I think it's okay. I think it's going to hold up. We'll see over time. But at least for today, it did pretty good. So that's it, folks. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for the patience, because this gun was bought with donations. Like back a live stream about a year ago, I had no interest in 300 Winchester Magnum whatsoever. but some viewers on a live stream persuaded me, started donating some money to get the compass, so I have done an extremely poor job of repaying that generosity by letting this project sit idle for 266 days. So I sincerely apologize for that. Hopefully we're back on track now. We can start making some progress, and I hope you will join me along the way. All right, see you guys next time.